back again, continuing on with our analysis of this data. Welcome to the candy corn guess analysis in Excel. All right, so in our last video, we made this relative frequency table. I went ahead and renamed this tab relative frequency table. I didn't want the tab to be too wide, so I abbreviated those words, but I just decided to rename it that instead of challenge number 1, because we're going to go on to sheet 2 to continue on with our analysis. I'm going to go ahead and copy column B. So you can do that by highlighting and then selecting Control C, or you can right click and go to copy. What Excel will do is put this kind of moving dotted border around it, and then you can go to sheet 2 and then click here and then hit Control V or right click and go to paste. Now notice there's several paste options. You can toggle through and hover and it'll show you different things. The first one keeps the formatting, like the borders and things, so I'm going to choose that one. Okay, so this is sheet 2. The purpose of this video, and I'm about to rename this sheet. The purpose of this video is to start getting into percentiles and quartiles and how to make a box plot in Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and rename, and I'll call it box plot. Okay, so here we have all of our data, and they are written in order. A quick review, just to also give some instruction about quartiles and percentiles, and I'm intentionally zooming out very far. So picture this as almost like an interval, like a number line, where our minimum value is up here, because it is, and our maximum number is down here, because it is. Okay, in that way, if we think about this as a number line, I'm just going to click somewhere around here. I'm trying to find about like halfway between. So between here and here, I'm just going to guess around this area. This is about halfway between the data. This value here, whatever, and we'll calculate it in a moment, but whatever that value actually is, this value is called the median. So the data value that is the very middle of the data set, and sometimes we don't have a middle number, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But the very middle of the data set is called the median. This is also known as the second quartile. I'm going to zoom back in. The second quartile, because that is above 2/4 of the data. So quartile is like fourths. So Q2 is 2/4. So whatever value is Q2, or the median, is the data value that is above 50% of the data. And by above, I mean greater than. Technically, that value is also less than 50% of the data as well. So to clarify, I will just kind of make some notes here. The median is the same thing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, the median is the same thing as Q2. It's also the same thing as P50, which is the 50th percentile. So this value has 50% of the data below and above it. Okay, we also have talked about Q1. Q1 is the same as the 25th percentile. That value has 25% of the data, or 1/4, which is why quartile, 1/4, which is 25% of the data less than it. So this value is going to be whatever guess is greater than 25% of all the other guesses. And if I wanted to go ahead and kind of copy that idea here, whatever, this is 50%. And again, if you're greater than 50% of all the other guesses, you're also less than 50%. But that's the only number that does that. Okay, then we also have Q2, which is the same as the, oh, sorry, we already talked about Q2. Q3, which is the same as the 75th percentile. So this value has whatever guess is the third quartile or the 75th percentile, that guess is greater than 75% of all the other guesses. Okay, so this is more of a review. We've learned these things in other videos, but I've just been reviewing what we're about to find here. So we can find these things in Excel really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and write Q0 because we're going to work on finding a box plot. And a box plot requires our 5-number summary. And our 5-number summary is Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q0 and Q4, as a reminder, are our minimum and our maximum, respectively, but I'm going to show you how to find these in Excel. Okay, so I'll start with Q1 just to start at something other than Q0. We're going to go ahead and hit the equal sign. That starts us off with using a function. And if you start typing quartile, we have a few options that pop up. In this case, I prefer to use the one that has the little yield sign kind of in the bottom right. I have just found that it works better with the data sets that the way I like to analyze the data sets, I guess. Okay, so I'll double click on quartile. Array, whenever it says array, that means data set. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this entire data set. Okay, and then comma. And then notice here, as soon as it goes to this section, so this is wanting another input here, it points out our 5-number summary. So we can pick 0, and that will choose the minimum. We could pick 1, and that would find the first quartile. We could pick 2, that would find the median or the 50th percentile. So notice like this is also detailing what we wrote up here, which is so cool. Excel, it's a statistician. Okay. I'm going to go ahead. We're looking at Q1 right now, so I'm going to double click on this. You could also just type 1 if you wanted to. You don't have to double click on that. Okay, when we hit enter, this finds Q1, so 218.25. Notice that that's not actually one of our guesses, which is totally fine. What that means is that we had, without going into it, we had 2 values that were middle values to find that number. So between 213 and 220, again, that's where they calculated that value to be. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and calculate all of these. Quartile, highlight, comma, 0. And we have watched other videos where we have found quartiles and percentiles by using, like by hand, by using a formula and a process. But in this way, we can do it pretty quickly, and Excel is very smart. So we can find all of these quartiles. The third quartile. All right, I'll find this one in a minute. What I want to point out here as well is that there is a percentile function in Excel. So you can type equals percentile. So notice it brings up several options. Again, with this one, I prefer the one with the yield sign. So if you type percentile here or double click it, and then highlight the data set. So percentiles break up a data set into hundredths instead of quartiles, which break up the data set into fourths. So here, when it's asking for K, what it's asking for is a percent, but in decimal form. So here, Q1, remember up here we said Q1 is the same as the 25th percentile. But instead of typing 25, what we're going to do is type 0.25. So we're typing the percent, but as a decimal. So, and to convert between those, we'll talk about that in a future lesson, but you are multiplying and dividing by 100, which shifts that decimal back and forth by 2. Okay, so this should be finding the same value. And it does. So again, Q1 is the same as the 25th percentile. Okay, I'm going to pause the video and find all of these, and then we'll keep going. All right, so we have found all of these. I want to point out in this column, we used the quartile function where we entered which quartile we were looking for. And I found this one outside of the video, so I put a 4 there. And I want to point out this column is when we use the percentile function. So the percentile function for Q3, we are looking at the value that is greater than 75%. So that's why we put this in as 0.05. Okay. I do want to point out that with the percentile function, we could find random percentiles. So we don't have to find the quartiles only. Let's say I wanted to know what is the 67th percentile, meaning what value is greater than 67% of all the guesses. So to find that, we can do equals percentile. I'm going to come back down to that one with that caution sign, or that's what I'm calling it, yield sign, caution sign. Highlighting my data set. And then to find the 67th percentile, to convert 67% to a decimal, we divide 67 by 100, which is the same as shifting that decimal place left by 2. So we can type this in, and it'll tell us 481. So any guess, I'll say if you guessed around 481, your guess was greater than 67% of all of the guesses. So I'm going to backtrack here and kind of point out, for example, where 481 is. So 484 is right here. So I'm going to highlight the cell just to make it more visible and say, if we look at this data set, okay, if we look at this data set as a whole, kind of like I said, as an interval or a number line, notice that this value does look like it's about, so 67% is 2/3. This value looks like it is 2/3 of the way down this line, meaning it looks like it is greater than 2/3 of the data. It looks like there is 1/3 of the data over here, meaning 1/3 of the data is our guesses that are greater than that value. So the 67th percentile cuts this data into 67% below that value and then 33% above that value, or I should, anyway, yeah, okay. So just wanted to give you a rundown of quartiles and percentiles in this context for this video, and then in the next video we'll make a box plot with these and also some other graphs. Okay, thanks.